to the roast portion of the evening. This is the part of the evening in which we're inviting people to come up and roast Betty, to share stories about Betty, to share anything humorous, anything touching that they want to share about their time with Betty and their experiences with Betty. Now, we've had a sign-up sheet. We've had a sign-up sheet. We've had a few people sign up. And once we get through the sign-up sheet, we'll start with freestyle, people coming up and sharing memories of Betty. Now, the very first person who signed up on the sheet is Cleo Beal. And she has the bead story and the motorcycle in Rome. Cleo's coming.
I'll even stand up with you.
The bead story is about the first time that she told me about her first trip to New Orleans. She showed up Wednesday evening choir practice, her and Joe, and she's got this big box full of beads. Plain beads and the blue beads, you know, with the medals on them and all kinds of beads. Spilling over this box was. And she says, anybody can have these beads if you want them. You can take them home with you. And I said, Betty, where'd you get all the beads? She says, well, I went to New Orleans to visit my daughter over Mardi Gras. And we stood and watched the parade. It was wonderful. I said, Betty, I've heard about the beads. I heard this rumor about the beads. She said, oh yes, it's true. If you show your front, they give you more beads. Now she had this box. And I thought about it a minute and I went, Betty, she said, no, I didn't really do it. She said, but it is fun to think about that my children still think I'm lying. She said that they were all concerned that I was going to. And so I really enjoyed myself. And the moral of that story is, Betty taught me that you should never get too old to frighten your children. Terry's going to tell the motorcycle story, because he was there for that. And since the Beals go together, we're a team.
Hello, my name is Terry Beal. I am Betty Engelman's oldest living godchild. And hopefully the last. Back in the second trip to Italy. We're walking down the street, and all of a sudden, the street kind of narrows. And this guy comes buzzing through us on a scooter. And we're all going, make way, and everybody's trying to squeeze over. We got all the choir members and people are trying to move. And this guy, he gets all the way up to Betty and he just stops. And he takes the scooter and he's going, whoa! Back then she goes, whoa! He goes, I know I'm from America, but you can just say, thank you, we're here. And that's my story.
And the moral of that story is, you should always be prepared to roll with the punches. because you don't know when somebody's going to goose you with a scooter.
Next up is Tony.
Tony, be nice.
Like that's
Birthday parties.
Now, Tony, do you have a roast or a series of grievances there?
It's kind of a combination.
This is going to hurt him more than it hurts you, buddy. That's right.
Rot roll.
First, at one time, there was two. I'm not going to go into that. No, Betty, this was your idea, right? To do a roast where we sit around and make fun of you? Because otherwise I wouldn't do it. Just double checking. But I've got some jokes here. My mama is so old.
How old is she?
She owes Jesus $5. My mom is so old, her birth certificate is expired. Her social security numbers in Roman numerals. It's number 1. The candles for these birthday cakes cost more than the birthday cakes. In her high school, there was no history class. She died, I know we all know she met the Pope and everything, but she also has an autographed Bible. She's got a Fred Flintstone postage stamp. The other day she walked into an antique store and they kept her. A long time ago, God said, "Let there be light." And they said, "Betty, would you flip the switch?" Betty knew Mr. Clean when he had an afro. She knew the Beatles when they were the new kids on the block. Betty, you are so old. Your memory's in black and white. Did you know that when Betty was born, the Dead Sea was just getting sick? She sued Google for naming a website after her age. The key on Ben Franklin's kite, that was the key to Betty's house. And once I told Betty to act her age, and she died. That's all I got.
Well, we broke some new boundaries.
Hey, Johnny, the triathlon's over now. Thank you very much.
Next up is Bernie Engelman.
Hi, Mom. I'm Bernie. I'm Roman numeral number 4. She used to mark all of our socks and underwear with Roman numerals, so that's how we learned our Roman numerals. But there was a whole house full of rowdy boys, 2 girls and 25 boys, I think is the way she states it. And there were always plenty of rumbles going on at our house. And Betty had a way of managing those rumbles very well. And so I brought to her secret weapon. Reaching that in there.
Be careful there, buddy.
This is how manage all those kids. And we have the marks to prove it. So, thank you, Heather.
Next up on the sign-up sheet is Andrew Engelman. I'm Andy. I'm Betty. Exhibit A. Roman numeral 3. Yeah, right. You know in the Bible where it says a time to build up, a time to tear down, and a time to laugh? Well, I always took that to mean that, occasionally or for a specific reason or for a good reason. Well, if you wanted to take life seriously in our family, it was an uphill battle. When I was about 7 or 8, we were at my grandma Grody's for a visit, and all the kids were in the car. Dad was at the driver's seat, engine running, and the headlights were on. It was at night. Mother comes out of Grandma Grody's house, says her goodbyes across the front yard, and in front of the headlights, she stops and dances a jig. Right in front of the headlights. The neighbors could have been watching. When you're 7 or 8 years old, 6 years old, it's embarrassing. So when she got in the car, I let her know about it. And I said through gritted teeth, "Must you always be so funny?" Her response, she laughed. Several years later, 2 of our sibling brothers were out in the backyard playing, who will remain nameless, and they had to relieve themselves. So as young boys often do when they're in the backyard, they relieve themselves in the backyard. While they're standing there doing their business, one brother turns to the other brother and just wets all over the side of his leg. I tried to make it anonymous for this.
Joe Turkey.
So the brother with the wet leg is furious, obviously. He goes in the house to tell. The brother with the dry leg is following him, trying to talk him out of telling. They get in the house, Mom and Dad are sitting there, and he says, "He's peed all over the side of my leg." Well, this makes Dad angry, and he says, "What do you think he is, a fire plug?" Mother's response? She laughed. To those of you that don't know, our Grandma Grody's mother was Grandma Lakey, Lizzie Lakey. She was our great-grandma. And Mother always spoke of Grandma Lakey with a great deal of fondness and admiration, and it was just someone that was very near and dear to her heart, Grandma Lakey. So, along the time they were moving into their house in Independence, there was a lot of cleaning and wiping and going on, so I'm standing at Mother's laundry tubs. She's standing over my right shoulder, and I see a piece of material, a nice printed soft piece of material. I said, "Can I use this for a rag?" She says, "Yeah." So I tear it in two. I commence to wiping and cleaning, and she leans over and says, "That's the dress that Grandma Lakey died in." I'm heartbroken. I've just ruined a family heirloom. So I'm going to turn around and apologize.
And I don't know if you've ever noticed this about Mother, but when she gets into one of those hysterical laughing spells, the first 10 or 15 seconds, there's no sound. So I turn around about the time she's coming up for air. And that's when the started. But after years of therapy, I'm over it. I've learned not to take life so seriously.
We have one more person on the sign-up sheet, and that is Tim Heil.
For those of you, 35 minutes? No problem. I can cover that easily. For those of you who don't know, my mother and her husband were brother and sister. So obviously, as cousins do, I spent a lot of time at their house. Aunt Betty was our brother Rick, who couldn't make it here today. She was his godmother. And Uncle Joe was my godfather. So at Christmas time, and back then with big families, you really didn't get a ton of presents like kids get today, but you got a little something from your godmother or godfather. So every year I got a little something from the two of them, and Rick and I tried to give them a little something here and there. So one year, unbeknownst to us, we get this little box just about this big, and you never know what she's going to give us or Uncle Joe's going to give us. So we open them up and pull them out, and lo and behold, it was a fur-lined athletic supporter. Beg your pardon?
Red fur.
Red fur, yes, definitely, which I was totally shocked when I walked in and saw her drinking a glass with red fur. I'm thinking, oh my God, she's giving me another one. But that wasn't the end of the story, luckily. That was Christmas, so it was a long wait till Halloween, but Rick and I were prepared. So we, on Halloween night, scamper over to St. Anthony Circle. We automatically, I don't know if we called John and Joe or who we called, but somebody knew we were showing up. We go down the driveway, down in through the basement. Betty has no idea we're there. We get all ready to go upstairs. And of course, we're wearing nothing but the athletic supporter that she has given us. So, yes, she just informed me right now that she made them. And a very good job at it. So, there we are, and of course, Rick and I are like, well, we can't go to the front door for God's sake, so we'll just go to the back door. So all the boys are downstairs. We're all laughing like hell. They're trying to scamper upstairs with Uncle Joe so they can see this. So we knock on the back door, and we're yelling trick or treat, and nobody will answer the door. We're just yelling and yelling, trick or treat, trick or treat. Finally, they get her to come and answer the door, and of course, like Andy said, about 2 minutes later when she came up for air, she was cackling like you could not believe. And I guess the real caveat to the story is that later on, when she is telling one of her neighbors all about this, her name, Sis Heist is asking Betty, or Betty's telling her all about this, and she looks square at Betty and says, well, why in the hell didn't you call me? Her humor and her spirit is rubbed off on all of us, all of our family as well. And I have just one other little small story that she relates to me almost every time I see her, and that is I don't know how big I was. I was at their wedding. I was 3 years old and at their wedding. And, but that has nothing to do with this little. I just remembered that, looking at her there. But she says that one time when I came over their house as a little kid, she asked me what did I like for dinner, and I said deviled eggs, of course. And she said, well, how many of those can you eat? I said, well, about 100. So I don't remember if I tried to tie Cool Hand Luke or not. I know I had deviled eggs at her house anytime I want. And I will say on behalf of all my brothers and sisters and brother-in-laws and sisters-in-laws that we love Betty dearly, and we're always so happy to have her around wherever we are, without a doubt.
We had another late sign up, and that is Bill has something to say.
I've got to do it this way because actually this is from our Aunt Margie. She sent this to my wife to have read here. And Margie writes, "Ah, Betty." Well, this isn't me, okay? So. Well, we have been sisters for 63 years. I only lived with you for 2 of those. My memories go back to yours and Joe's apartment on Pike Street. You had a gray with red top table with matching chairs you used whenever you hosted a family dinner. I always remember going to the farmer's market with you. I had a time trying to figure out what penny candy to buy with my nickel. The next set of memories were on the white leather jacket Joe bought you. You always wore Avon's Roses, Roses. That was your fragrance. I think you eventually replaced it with English lavender. Florals always smelled so good on you. Then came my competition, Johnny. I was 4. He used to smile at a camera when it was sitting on a shelf. And then I thought that was cute, as everyone else did. When he was an infant, Jimmy began his fruitcake baking. That night, flour, fruit, nuts, etc. was spread all over the kitchen. You, Joe, Mom, and Dad went somewhere and you forgot to leave a bottle or anything else. Janie wound up feeding Johnny with a straw. I guess you were a beginner at being a mom at that time. Sorry, Johnny. The next event that comes to mind was a Thanksgiving. You and Joe drove away in your Ford Fairlane station wagon. When you got home, you phoned Mom reporting that you forgot Bernie.
That's easy to do.
We found him asleep behind a chair. Of course, Joe drove back from Swan Circle, Erlanger, and got him. You were getting better. Sorry, Bernie. Oh, gosh. Darling Johnny wasn't involved. Then came the time that she babysat for us, and the top part of this is cut off, but and we convinced Margie that we could camp out. Margie was babysitting, and we convinced Margie that we could camp out, and Julie was the tipper. Julie convinced Margie that we were allowed to camp out. Darling Johnny wasn't involved because he went somewhere with Katie that evening. Joey was the instigator. Well, when you came home and heard what happened, Joe went out looking for them. One by one, they came in crying, even Julie. I was surprised at that. I don't know if any of the others knew it or not, but she was the only one that wasn't spanked. It's been too many years ago for retributions, fellas. Sorry, Julie. As a baby, Billy's eyelashes were so long they glued themselves together when he had a cold. You had to soak them with warm water so he could open them. You were concerned about Andy when you finally figured out that he was lovesick over Sissy. Amy, Tony, and Matt were labeled the last ones. And Joey, you really frightened everyone when you were hiding from your mom in the spare mattress. We've all heard that story. I remember so much from my growing up years with you and your entire family. We aunts and uncles used to buy loud toys for your kids for gifts like drums, etc. The gallon of paint that spilled on your new carpet, the bath time parade, the walking up the walls to their bedrooms, the rows of polished shoes and white shirts for Sunday Mass, the piles of diapers stacked on your hope chest, the bright red flower handkerchief you sent to work with Joe, the times at the emergency room after Bernie and Joe slit their wrist while playing, the massive amounts of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches you could make so fast. The events leading up to Joe opening his lunchbox at work, Jell-O-soaked sandwich, pound salt. Oh, I just remembered your visits from your milkman on Swan Circle. One of the memories I will never forget is when I phoned for advice about my very hyperactive son. You said that you didn't know what to say because you never had experiences like mine. I phoned the pediatrician right away. I could go on and on, but some of my memories of your kids are of your kids and less of you. Our lives are made up of moments and those worth remembering and our memories. Thanks for the memories, big sister. I'll never lose them. I love you, and happy 80th birthday. Love, Margie.
That was everyone that signed up. But I would bet that there's another person or two in this room that may have a thought, an idea, a feeling. Eli?
How about Christopher Walker? Here comes Joe. My little pusher. He's got to do it. He worked today.
Nobody else?
Here comes the
How could I possibly go where everybody else has gone? My name is Greg Schaefer. I'm extended family of the Engelmans. I do this thing down at the cathedral. I play the organ and I conduct the choir now. I'm not the music director. They won't let me do that. But I play the organ now, took over for Dad, who can't be here, and I know he would have a few things to say, Bob. So I felt compelled to say something about Betty's, the side of Betty that I'm sure you all know about, but maybe aren't aware of how deep the threads run with the Engelman family in the choir. This is the choir at the cathedral down in Covington. And Joe started in '52, so it was 4 years before I was even born. And then I sang as a boy in the choir when we had boys and men all through the 60s and very early 70s. I knew Joe back then, he called me G-Rig. How you doing this morning, G-Rig? I'll never forget that. And then when the women started in the early 70s, Betty was there at the very first when we left the boys and men format and went to women, adult women and men, and Betty was there on day one. Were you not? No, I'm going to say you were there from the get-go. She was there very early on and very dedicated, and that would have been, maybe by 1975. And from those days to this day,
Betty is there every Sunday at Mass, every Wednesday at rehearsal, every pontifical, every extra thing we do, and of course all the parties. But she's there unfailingly, and usually sometimes before I get there, is Betty and Rhonda. And over the years, I have adopted Betty as my surrogate mother. I can't tell, I still can't tell if that was her doing when I never really realized it, or if it was something I actively did, but I look at her as a maternal influence on me, and that she's kind of got her eye on me most of the time, whether I know it or not. And that's a good thing because it keeps me on the straight and narrow. I had to ask Monsignor to cut his sermon short tonight at Mass so I could get it. Or we'd still be there from 4:30 Mass. No, and also with the choir back in the 80s, we took some trips to Europe, and Joe and Betty were always on those trips and always quite present in their effervescent personality. Betty holding court on the buses and keeping everybody in line, and her laugh could really honestly cut through any noise that was going on in the bus. And I remember, there were some tense times, this and that, with all the performing and plans, and she just kept the keel always even, never too much sway to one side or the other, and reminded us all what there is to living, and still does to this day. And it extended through to the next generation at different times. All of the kids sang with the choir, I'm sure of their own accord, but I'm sure with some encouragement from Mom and Dad. And I never forget those times, as busy as our lives are, that the kids took time to spend time with us. Some went on trips with us, very meaningful times with the choir. We always remember that. Two things stand out. One more recently, when we took a trip to New Orleans. It's been 3 summers ago now already. And we made it down there and had a wonderful time. But really, the peak of that whole trip, Baton Rouge, we saw Bishop Munch, and to New Orleans for some visiting down there. But the highlight of that trip was hosted by Julie and David at their house. They bring this whole mess of singers and their friends and spouses, and they hosted us for a shrimp boil in their house, which they had just put back together after Katrina. And that also goes down in permanent memory as a very special time. And I keep telling myself, I gotta send Julie a card, a thank you card, a thank you card. It's only been 3 years. But back in '86, when our first trip to Rome with the choir, and I don't have all the details perfectly, but I know the essence of this story in terms of international travel and what kind of but the experiences that can happen. We were in Rome in a very popular piazza, the Piazza Navona. A number of us were there on our own, and as you might have heard, there are sometimes riffraff, old gypsies, and maybe not such great citizens that want to try to remove items and money off of your person. We were told, keep things close to your body. And one of our elderly couples, Jean and the Fries, were out, and they were just walking along, and somebody apparently grabbed Jean's, Neil's, was it Neil's or Jean's, grabbed his passport? Oh, I am? See, it's already too late. I thought you went running after this. Oh, it was Ben. Okay. Well, it was a choir member. I'll leave it at that. Was accosted by one of these.
They got his passport and
his airline ticket. And Betty wasn't having any of that action, and she went after the culprit. and as I understood, told him off a little bit and put him in his place. So in the efforts of worldwide jurisprudence and peace, Betty has made leaps and bounds. And yeah, I was sitting back there when I got here late, and I'm sorry I got here late, and things were well underway with the crucifixion of Betty. And I thought, well, there has to be one thing I can, but I honestly, there's a side of her that's just an angel that's about all I see. The good side, the bright, not that there's a bad side, but our time together is something that has affected my life in a way. She and Joe lived by example to show you, as they said, if you take life too seriously, it'd be an uphill battle. And sometimes in our lives, it's kind of the other way around, but Betty shows me week after week what it's all about, and I thank her and love her for it. So maybe the choir can stand up. You guys want to sing something?
Oh, that'd be good.
Business as usual. It's like choir stand up and well, everybody know what we're going to sing? Just one time. One last call for anyone who wants to come up and roast.
Mother-in-law to my children's spouses, that you vet me, and that they find spouses that have mothers as wonderful as you.
Now you're not.
Anybody else have anything?
Well, I was wanting to, but.
Now, I'm going to turn it over to Rob. We'll actually do this together. I have two stories, one which you can tie into.
You tell it, and
Or
I'll
actually,
tell
it's
you.
a story and a thought.
Okay, you go for it.
Okay.
First, when I was flying up here, I was trying to think of a couple of things or stories to relate. I want to reiterate what Ellen said. We're not the Hiles, we're not the Grovies, we're not the Engelmans. We're sort of the members